On November 18th, 2015, Cal Phillips had just one simple task: to let an appliance delivery man into his home in Pembroke, Kentucky. It seemed like an ordinary day in this small town of about 700 people. But what happened next would shock the community and lead to a mystery that would take years to unravel. When Cal missed the delivery, his wife Pamela was furious at first. But as the day went on and he didn't answer her many phone calls, her anger turned to worry. It was November 19th, 2015. The sun had barely risen when someone spotted something alarming: a car on fire near a cornfield just outside of town. As the firefighters doused the flames, a horrifying discovery awaited them. Inside the charred remains of the car were two bodies, burned beyond recognition. The peaceful town of Pembroke was about to be thrust into a mystery that would haunt it for years to come. The police, not used to dealing with such gruesome scenes in their small town, began their investigation. They traced the car's ownership to a house in Pembroke, 443 South Main Street. It belonged to a well-known couple in town, Calvin and Pamela Phillips. With heavy hearts and a sense of dread, the police made their way to the Phillips home. What they found there only deepened the mystery and horror of the situation. Outside the house, they found spots that looked like blood in the grass. Inside, they made another grim discovery: Cal's body at the bottom of the basement stairs. He had been beaten and shot 5 times. Outside, they found a cell phone and a handgun in the grass. In the span of a few hours, this small Kentucky town was faced with not one, not two, but 3 deaths. The victims were identified as Calvin Phillips, 59 years old, found in his home; Pamela Phillips, 58 years old, Calvin's wife, found in the burned car; Ed Dancero, 63 years old, the Phillips neighbor, also found in the burned car. As news of the murders spread through Pembroke like wildfire, attention turned to the house directly across the street from the Phillips. It was home to U.S. Army Major Christian Kit Martin and his wife, Joan Harmon. The very next day after the bodies were discovered, police and Army investigators showed up at Martin's door. They had a search warrant in hand, looking for anything that might connect Martin to the murders: blood, hair, fingerprints, anything at all. It turned out that Calvin Phillips was supposed to testify in a military trial against Major Martin. This trial, called a court-martial, was scheduled to happen in just 2 weeks. Martin was in hot water with the Army because his wife had made some serious accusations against him. Joan had told authorities that Martin had SA'd her 2 children and hadn't properly handled classified military information. These were heavy charges that could end Martin's military career and land him in prison. Calvin Phillips was set to be a key witness in this trial. As the police dug deeper, they found a surveillance camera at Martin's house. Martin's lawyer said this camera would prove that Martin was home around 2 a.m. on November 19th. This was important because someone had reported hearing strange noises from the field where the burned car was found around that time. Even with the murder investigation hanging over him, Martin's military trial went ahead as planned. In the end, he was found guilty of mishandling classified information and assaulting a child, but he was cleared of the more serious charges of raping a child. The verdict meant Martin had to spend 90 days in a military prison. After that, he was kicked out of the Army. Once he got out of prison, he moved to North Carolina to start a new life. To understand this complex story better, let's look at how all these people were connected. 1. Christian Kit Martin, the Army major living across the street from the Phillips. 2. Joan Harmon, Martin's wife, who was in the process of divorcing him. 3. Calvin and Pamela Phillips, the murder victims living across from Martin and Harmon. 4. Ed Dancero, the Phillips' neighbor, who was also killed. Joan Harmon had told people that Martin was abusing her and her 3 children. The Phillips believed her story and even let her stay in one of their rental properties when she left Martin. One day, when Calvin Phillips was helping Joan move her things out of Martin's house, they found some classified military information that Martin shouldn't have had at home. Calvin had also seen a disturbing photograph of Joan's son. The boy's back was covered in red marks and bruises, which Joan said were from Martin beating him. This photo became part of the reason why Martin was put on trial by the military. There was also a financial aspect to all of this. If Martin had been found guilty of all charges in his military trial, Joan would have received a large sum of money from the military, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars. After Joan moved out, she, the Phillips, and Dancero all took a class together to learn how to carry concealed weapons. It seemed they all felt they needed protection. As his court-martial approached, Martin hired private detectives to help build his defense. These detectives interviewed Calvin Phillips about 2 weeks before he was killed. They asked Calvin why he had given the classified information to the FBI. Calvin's answer was simple and straightforward. He said that kind of information didn't belong in a private home. The detectives also asked Calvin about Joan's claims that Martin had abused her and the children. Calvin told them that Joan had said she was afraid of Martin, but she had never mentioned anything about Martin hurting the kids. They even asked Calvin if he was having an affair with Joan. Calvin didn't want to answer that question or talk about what he was planning to say in the upcoming trial. After the murders, Joan gave an interview on TV. She strongly denied having an affair with Calvin, saying Martin had been spreading that rumor for years. But there was a twist to this story. In some legal documents from 2019, a former police officer claimed he had once caught Calvin and a woman having sex in Calvin's warehouse. When the woman left 15 minutes later, the officer recognized her as Joan Harmon. After the murders, Martin gave an interview where he insisted he was innocent. He said Calvin was actually going to be his star witness in the military trial, supporting his side of the story. Martin believed Joan wanted revenge on him. He also mentioned that soon after the murders, a woman had called the local news station with a strange tip. She said there was evidence of the murders in Major Chris Martin's yellow house across the street. Matt Phillips, the son of Calvin and Pamela, told investigators something unsettling. He said his mother had seen Martin walking in the fields near their house before the murders. Matt said his parents felt like they were being watched. As if the story wasn't complicated enough, another surprising fact came to light. It turned out that Joan had been married to another man while she was married to Martin. This is a crime called bigamy. Joan admitted to this, saying she didn't have enough money to fight the charge in court. In May 2016, she was given 5 years of unsupervised probation for this offense. For more than 3 years after the murders, life in Pembroke tried to return to normal, but the unsolved crime hung over the town like a dark cloud. Then, on May 11th, 2019, there was a breakthrough in the case. Christian Kit Martin was arrested, but it wasn't in Pembroke or even in North Carolina where he was living. It was at an airport in Louisville, Kentucky. Martin, now working as a pilot for a small airline associated with American Airlines, was about to fly a plane to Charlotte, North Carolina when police stopped him. Martin was charged with 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of burglary, arson, and 3 counts of tampering with evidence. The small town of Pembroke was buzzing with the news. After all this time, had they finally caught the killer? When Martin went to court, he said he was not guilty of these terrible crimes. Interestingly, the charges also suggested that Martin might have worked with someone else to commit the murders, but this other person hasn't been identified. The judge decided that Martin was too risky to let out of jail while waiting for his trial. He set Martin's bail at a whopping $3 million, $1 million for each victim. The judge was worried that Martin, being a pilot, might try to run. Martin's lawyers thought $3 million was way too much for bail. They asked the judge to lower it to $500,000, but the judge refused. The story of the Pembroke murders is far more complex than it initially appears, with lingering questions about Martin's guilt and the strength of the evidence against him. The motive for the killings of Dancero, Pam, and Cal Phillips became clearer as the investigation unfolded. It was closely tied to Martin's upcoming court-martial trial and the potential loss of his military career. Cal Phillips had been expected to testify in Martin's court-martial, which was scheduled to take place just days after the murders. If convicted in the court-martial, Martin faced the loss of his military career. This provided a strong motive for silencing Cal before he could testify. Authorities believe that Martin primarily targeted Cal Phillips. Pamela Phillips and Ed Dancero were likely killed as collateral damage when they unexpectedly encountered Martin at the scene. Notably, Martin had video evidence supporting his alibi for part of the time in question. Surveillance footage showed Martin at home at 2 a.m. on the morning of November 19th, when the car fire was discovered. This timing is significant, as it places Martin at his residence during a crucial period related to the crimes. However, the case against Martin relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, with no eyewitnesses or DNA directly tying him to the crime scenes. Some key pieces of evidence raised questions. A bullet casing and dog tag were found on the Phillips property in April 2016 by the family, months after police had searched the area at least 3 times. This raised concerns about potential evidence planting or mishandling. The dog tag bore a nickname rather than Martin's full name, and had an unusual thread chain, leading some to question its authenticity. Curiously, there were 2 separate crime scenes, one at the Phillips residence where Cal's body was found, and another in a cornfield near Pembroke where the burnt remains of Pamela and Edward were found. Joan, Martin's ex-wife, played a central role in the case. She was found to have Pam's cell phone after the murders, turning it in only after it had been factory reset. Joan's credibility came into question due to a history of proven lies in her relationships with Martin and past spouses. Some speculated that if Joan and her son had testified, the investigation and outcome might have been different. But since they were never the primary suspects, they just pled the Fifth Amendment during the trials. Adding another layer of complexity, weapons were later discovered hidden in Martin's staircase, strongly suggesting his guilt. The circumstances of this discovery were revealed by Lieutenant Scott Smith of the Christian County Sheriff's Department in Kentucky. 2 years after Martin's conviction, while monitoring Martin's prison phone calls, investigators overheard him urgently directing his sister to recover a box hidden inside the stairs of his house in Raleigh, North Carolina, which was about to be sold. Martin did not disclose the contents of this box to his sister. Acting on this information, Lieutenant Smith and another law enforcement officer flew to Raleigh and recovered the hidden weapons. The discovery included 1. A silencer that fit the Glock 45 used to kill Cal Phillips. Both the silencer and the Glock were painted the same gray-green color. 2. An AR-15-22 with several components removed. Investigators believe these missing components could have been used to determine if the weapon was used to kill 2 of the victims. The silencer potentially explains why no one heard gunshots during the murders. Now, Martin's defense team argued that the evidence could have been planted, pointing to multiple searches of Phillips' property that initially yielded nothing. They also highlighted the lack of forensic evidence directly implicating Martin. Despite the defense's efforts, Martin was found guilty in June 2021 and was charged with murder, arson, burglary, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Pembroke murders case serves as a stark reminder of the challenges in achieving justice in complex criminal investigations. It highlights the importance of thorough evidence collection, the potential pitfalls of relying on circumstantial evidence, and the need to consider all possible scenarios before reaching a conclusion. While the legal system has rendered its verdict, the case continues to spark debate and raise questions about what really happened on that fateful day in Pembroke.